Friends, good evening. Hello. We welcome everyone who is watching us on FEIGIN Live. We welcome everyone who has tuned in and is watching on the YouTube channel KURBANOVA Live. Thank you very much for being with us today. I would like to remind you that February 24th marks exactly the third anniversary of the terrible events, the beginning of the full-scale invasion of the Russian Federation into the territory of Ukraine. But it is important not to forget that the war as a whole has been going on for more than 11 years. We are merely noting that 3 years marks a completely different phase. What is happening on this third anniversary? What has been happening in Kyiv, the sanctions, the statement by Donald Trump that came out just before our meeting with Mark FEIGIN? We will, of course, discuss all of this with Mark. Mark, good evening.
Greetings, ALENA. Greetings to all the viewers of the FEIGIN Life channel, the KURBANOVA Life channel, and of course the X network, where this broadcast is being streamed live on the FEIGIN Life account and the FEIGIN Life Telegram channel. I hope you, especially viewers from Russia, you can watch this live broadcast there.
Friends, I am sure that many of our viewers from Ukraine, and probably not only from Ukraine, have their own memory of February 24th, 2022, what you were doing, where you were, how you found out about this war. Write to us in the comments. Firstly, it's also a way, to let out your emotions a little, because of course, all these flashbacks are very painful for us today, but nevertheless, it's very important. Do not forget the events. Do not forget what is happening in our country. And of course, as always, I also suggest you react to all the topics and statements that we will discuss today. And don't forget, friends, to leave us a like and subscribe to the YouTube channel FEIGIN.LifeLife, the YouTube channel KURBANOVA Live. Do not believe everyone who says that the war will end soon. In fact, to make sure you don't miss anything, it's better for you to stay with us. Mark, when I mentioned that Donald Trump has come out and is making more statements, his rhetoric doesn't change. It's actually amazing that he says the same thing every day. Literally, he says the same thing. Soon, peace, peace, peace. We'll all sign. Everything will be great. I had excellent negotiations, a great conversation, a wonderful meeting. Incredible smiles. Some strong handshake and so on. But there's no substance behind it. But there is substance in the words of Foreign Minister Lavrov, who said the following today, that Russia reports that it does not intend to cease its actions in the war against Ukraine until, that is the outcome, the result that will satisfy the Russian Federation, is completely achieved in any way. Despite all these statements, I would also like to remind you that there was a message from Donald Trump that a meeting is supposed to take place in Riyadh tomorrow, the next round. Russia is not saying, wait, we're not going anywhere, we haven't come up with anything, agreed on anything, or done anything yet. So how does the statement from Washington align with the statement from Moscow? Do they even read each other?
I'll tell you more. The resolution that has been adopted now in Moscow wasn't exactly a big win. They had already agreed on it with Washington. Washington took a soft resolution where Moscow isn't blamed at all, under their own editorship. At the beginning of the war, 3 years ago, even though, I repeat, the UN is absolutely useless, an institution absolutely meaningless. But we're not talking about the UN right now, we're talking about Washington and its position. And the resolution adopted is still harmful to Moscow's interests, declaring its responsibility for instigating it. These are the amendments from Brussels and Ukraine, you see.
But there are two resolutions.
Two resolutions, yes, but we're talking about the main one, on which, so to speak, the United States abstained, at the very least. And we're talking about the public position of Washington's representative at the UN. Is that what interests us? These papers are meaningless. In essence, they are the same every year and nothing changes. But here are significant changes. Look at how it turns out. Already now, in favor of Moscow, the Trump administration is doing all sorts of things and declares that Ukraine will not be in the UN. In NATO. And resolutions at the UN are adopted taking into account Moscow's interest. Well, that's how it turned out, yes, that is the position. Polentona is public, someone will see a game in this, some kind of, let's portray it, but in reality the resonance will still be accepted, and we will, as it were, earn points in front of Moscow, meaning the administration, Trump himself and his administration, they, through Witkoff, Trump's special envoy who participates in the delegation on behalf of the United States of America, declare that the Istanbul agreements could serve as a basis for peace negotiations and agreements. Quote, not mine, but he is a participant in the negotiation group. He is a member of this delegation. Seriously, really. I mean, I'm not even talking about the public accusations, those public accusations that are constantly being made essentially against Trump himself. In other words, they have already done everything Moscow needs, and even more, and even above and beyond. You understand That's it. The question is what in return? Why am I making this reference? Because there are still these diehard Trump supporters who keep telling us and have been telling us, you don't understand anything, you're idiots, you need to support, just silently comply with Trump, bend over, spread your cheeks. They suggest anything to us. Right. He has such a strong plan in his head, but he's not obliged to tell you about it. Really? Seriously? Tell us, hint to us, what is this plan? To give Moscow, to gift Ukraine to Moscow. Such a cunning plan to leave the war. Really? That's how it is. Fooled everyone, but so far only he is being fooled. For now, Trump looks very, very pale. But let's be honest, let's state it as it is. He hasn't achieved anything yet, hasn't gained anything. And he has done, made, and caused so much in 4 weeks, well, soon 5 weeks, of being in power that it has changed the entire American policy. He quarreled with all the allies, scared them off, as they say, in different directions. He dumped, flushed down the toilet all the garbage, meaning 3 years of US support and leadership in supporting Ukraine as the main ally. He made so many gestures and concessions to Moscow that it, in general, could never, for any money ever, for any decades, receive as much as it did in 4.5 weeks. Well, not even once. This, by the way, is also a reference to that. They say that all of us, you, me, we, are agents of the Washington Regional Committee, and we will do everything it orders us to do. Like if it tells us to bend over and you... Look how it turns out. And we criticize Washington and Trump. We even tear him to shreds. Right. Oh. And it turns out we are people with principles, with conviction. You didn't know, but we told you about it. As my late comrade Navalny used to say, we are the sum of our actions. How Washington behaves, that's how we will treat it. And it's not some sacred cow. Can you imagine? And we will criticize, and we will tear to shreds if it deserves it, whether it's Trump or anyone else or Biden. We don't care. Do you seriously think that we are all CIA agents here? I ask this question rhetorically. To this woolly and Trump-like environment? Guys, no. No. We are not at all interested in what happens in US domestic politics. It's up to the Americans, whom we respect if they want. They get from Trump probably the implementation of the program he declared. Not a single aspect concerns us. I have already spoken many times about the attitude towards the war, the attitude towards Ukraine. Well, in connection with the war, the attitude towards allies, Brussels, in Europe, for which they can also be criticized for many things. We are not interested in the relationship between the US and Europe and the attitude towards Moscow a lot. As soon as we see a mismatch with our position on these markers, on these points, and our position is B, truth, justice, and evil, so to speak, fairness and aggression, historical truth, and therefore deception. That's the criterion. Not about whether you support us or do it the way you're told. They said, yes, no, that's not the point. Don't call white black. What, is Moscow not an aggressor? But who are they trying to convince? And why was it an aggressor before? Back then? Or is it just a matter of convenience, a benefit? Rare earth metals flowed in the other direction. That's the assessment we give to current American policy. If it changes tomorrow, we'll give a different assessment. The sum of our actions, that is, we evaluate Trump based on how he behaves. We have neither bias nor affection. Initially, we will evaluate from the perspective of truth and reality. Anyone, moreover, repeating whether it's Americans and Ukrainians or Putin, what difference does it make from our point of view? Putin is a villain, a cannibal, and this is not just our point of view, it's an objective reality. He is a war criminal who should be sentenced to the highest measure. There are no other options here. For the heinous crime of killing hundreds of thousands of people, there can be no other thought of punishment at all. Who is there to discuss? What Washington continues to do, we try to find an explanation. First, in non-material motives. Well, that's how he sees and understands American policy. That's how it should be acted upon. I ask again, what benefit has been gained by the United States? America over these 4 or 4.5 weeks? What did they get from Moscow? From the perspective of international politics, I'm not discussing economic material aspects and so on. What did the USA gain, having driven away all allies, thus creating a vacuum of support for Ukraine, which it supported? Initially, it had this position as a consolidation, as a unified position of the bipartisan majority. But why? Why was it flushed down the toilet? For whom? For Putin. Seriously? All right, let's move on to the dividends. What economic dividends from Moscow did Washington receive? Or are they being promised these dividends? I don't know. Personally, Trump to his family, Vitkov to whom? Or does someone think this can be hidden? And that behind all these deals, secret and so on, this will be concealed, this truth from the public. Listen, even allies are we? Well, we are biased people. Okay, fine. But even his allies, though biased people, have started to criticize him. Here's Boris Johnson, for example, who gave an interview to a European newspaper where he said, "What are you doing?"
Today in Kiev as well. Today in Kiev, Boris Johnson also expressed himself. I will just add that right now Trump is saying that he will try to conclude several agreements with Russia on economic development. Russia has what we need. For example, my God, rare earth metals.
Again, another interview. He's obsessed with this rare earth metal. When Zelensky offered these rare earth metals, among other products that could be of interest to the United States and its allies, it implied an exchange, increased aid to Ukraine, the creation of a real economic incentive for Ukraine's future reconstruction after the war, but it also entailed the obligation to protect Ukraine right now. All of this can be obtained not when Ukraine is paying or if Russia takes its place. Trump, perhaps thinking this way, if Russia captures Ukraine, then it will be resolved from Russia. These 500 billion will flow from ports of gas, oil, rare earth metals from Ukraine. The question was not posed that way, and Johnson criticizes this kind of deal, questioning such an approach regarding money, not me. Johnson is a consistent Trumpist, but he also follows the same strategy. What is beneficial to the world, what contributes to strengthening Euro-Atlantic unity, and so on, is also advantageous to the United States itself. And not like when a politician comes along and starts acting in a different direction. It's unclear for what motive a single aggressor who destroyed the entire security system, and suddenly it turns out that this was possible, that it was necessary, because he did it in the interest of property security. Well, we never thought that way. This is something entirely different. This turns the entire international system upside down. So does it mean that this is allowed? Then what are the limitations? Why are there any restrictions on Ukraine regarding the possession of nuclear weapons? Well, if this is allowed by the right of force, is it peace through force? And they assume this peace through force, that Ukraine can also demonstrate this power, such power that is blind and doesn't pay attention when they hang on their hands. Oh, don't do that. Don't shoot here. Don't put it there. Don't seriously acquire nuclear weapons. But why not simply, perhaps, why then? Now, regarding peace, is it achievable from Moscow? The answer is no. Either Trump will have to come, he's afraid. On one hand, he's in a hurry, but on the other hand, he's scared. Where is his peace plan? Well, just wait. He should honestly say, I will achieve peace at the expense of Ukraine, I will surrender it, and there will be peace. No, that will definitely happen. There will be peace, but Ukraine...
There will be no peace. He goes from Ukraine to Europe.
Correct. So he doesn't want to say that, because then everyone will say, wait, why are you doing this? Then who benefits from this? That you will gift Ukraine to Putin for some rare earth metals with Russia or uranium there. I don't know what he has with Russia. It's shocking. What, seriously? So the economic consequences, even for the United States itself, will be inevitably worse, more monstrous. The price to pay will be much higher, because Putin will go further. Those very Ukrainian soldiers will already be fighting somewhere in the Baltics, in Moldova, in Georgia, and in other places. They're in Armenia. If they resist further annexation, I'm not even talking further, Poland or Finland and so on. He doesn't understand this. Well then, let someone explain it to him. American politics has always behaved very primly. We know better than anyone else. We figure everything out ourselves. Well, there is an opportunity. Explain to Donald Alfredovich. Fredovich of some father, he says, explain that this is not the case. He doesn't listen to anyone. Well, wait, but that's strange. What institutions, think tanks are working, unable to explain what the Kremlin's strategy is, and what it has been for 25 years, that it remains unknown. No one understands what Putin wants. It's a mystery. You haven't seen any of this. You are seeing all of this for the first time now. But it's strange. Listen, it's strange. I repeat once again, I am not considering the versions that supposedly he is a spy, a KGB agent. I simply don't know that. How can I discuss what I don't know and what I haven't seen? And I don't see any facts proving the espionage nature of Donald Lutrin's activities. I don't have these facts. Just as I cannot assert that Trump was bought, promised $100 billion, like do this, as I also don't know that. But also, since we haven't seen the documents, this was published today, we can fantasize about this topic. I also am not a supporter of such primitive conspiracy theories. The infinity of Len is much more important than these minor deals. You see, I don't quite understand where. I repeat, we have a lot of conspiracy theorists who, from both sides, come and say, yes, you are completely stupid, FEIGIN. These are the ones who accused me of criticizing Trump. Now they come running and shout that FEIGIN is defending Trump, saying he's a pure agent. And tomorrow you guys will sing a different tune, you know? You'll sing a different tune. I've heard it. I've already seen it. All the same people who criticize me for criticizing Trump. And my guests weren't like that. They were all against Trump, and Trump is great. And now the same ones are shouting that Trump is an agent and you're all on his payroll. Well, it's the same thing every time. Well, for heaven's sake, we're not talking about them. I repeat once again, he will not achieve peace with Moscow because he cannot go for such peace. At the expense of Ukraine? He can't. He didn't promise that. That's not what is expected of him. He doesn't have such authority. He can leave Ukraine without military aid for a certain period if Congress doesn't intervene decisively in this situation, probably create huge problems for Ukraine. He can create huge problems, let's not deny that. It is currently being actively discussed whether Europe can support Ukraine without the USA. Yes, it can, but for a limited period, maybe until 2025. Perhaps for this, incredible efforts need to be made to even sustain that period, including a no-fly zone and missiles, not even considering transferring Taurus and everything else, including planes and pilots, providing them and sending contingents. And then Ukraine has a chance, but if, on the other hand, Washington helps Moscow by pulling it out of the economic swamp where it truly is, it's foolish to deny this. There are economic problems in Russia. They are not trivial. That's a fact. It's foolish to deny it. Well, wait a minute. This is, again, one main ally first helped Ukraine, now has come and started helping Moscow, or what Moscow, clearly and distinctly articulates its demands. It has not retreated from them. You quoted Lavrov. They all say the same thing in different ways. It will be, as we say, the only agreement option is the one we propose. There are no others. Wait, how else can this be interpreted? How else can this be interpreted? Trump fell into a trap. Putin got caught in it and is struggling in these nets. He thinks that Putin, thanks to, so to speak, these nods, in his direction will suddenly be inclined to go for some acceptable peace, for some acceptable, well, at least outwardly appearing mutual conditions, which the parties will discuss and agree upon. So this will not happen. He wants everything. How many times have I said this in these broadcasts? How many times have I said that Moscow intends to seize all of Ukraine? They do not hide it. They have never said anything different. There was no other conversation. Never. Well, in any case, today I can state that Trump now has to step away from his strategy that he defined regarding Ukraine, the war. And for Putin himself, it's very difficult because you said one thing, then you turn 180 degrees again, and now you will say something else. This can only be done by an external force in the form of Congress, in the form of the American establishment, the deep state, which can force, they have this tool, it's not untrue, they have it to act differently on this issue. In other matters, okay. But on this issue, to act differently, to force, there are some groups of Democrats and Republicans in Congress. They exist, they do, they will want to, they will agree among themselves and make the appropriate decisions. Yes, this is known in the sense of a coup. But they just need to limit Trump's powers where he is free, and, for example, to conclude a peace agreement with Russia at the expense of Ukraine. This should be limited. He can be obliged. No, well, wait, this has already happened in the first term. He was restricted in lifting sanctions against Russia. That happened, and I do not rule out that something similar could occur. Why I don't assign a zero probability to this is because I know what processes are underway, negotiations are ongoing, there are intense discussions, and it's still very difficult internally, not yet public. I repeat, they are not speaking there. They will most likely send someone. Someone will fly in as an option. Well, not 25, 20 something changes. Again, they will talk about nothing. Amiable representatives will come out and say, oh, we are making such good progress in the negotiations. Trump will say, we are close, just a little bit, more to go.
2 weeks.
What 2 weeks?
Well, okay, not 2 weeks. Trump just said that, yes, 2 weeks. The war might end soon. A few weeks.
A few, but not two, a few.
Okay, a few, we know that's 2 to 3 weeks.
Young words, like a few, mean it could be endless. Long, a few is almost the same. 2 to 3 weeks, we've heard that too. And from some we've already heard they're singing a different tune now. But no. Oh, I tell you responsibly, Oje, let's make a bet. No, they won't end. Definitely not in 2 weeks. A few weeks, that's so vague. How many is that? Is it one and more? No, that won't happen. Why? Because Moscow will demand Ukraine to be surrendered to it. If Trump declares that he is surrendering Ukraine, first of all, why would Ukraine surrender? Is he going to order Ukrainian soldiers to lay down their arms or what, Trump? He won't stop the supplies, for example, military ones. Yes, there might be a pause for a moment. Although, again, I repeat, this is not resolved like this. Someone thinks that Trump will just set everything unequivocally, but no, it's more complicated. It's a more complex story, not so linear. And again, I repeat, the war will not stop because there is nothing to end it. If this nothing means Moscow's goodwill and readiness for compromise, it doesn't exist at all, so let it be, he says. As Kasparov said, when his coach, I think Botvinnik, told him, he said, let the uncle make his move. Let the uncle make his move.
Now, I have a very powerful statement, but before that, I will say that the Financial Times wrote that the only interest Trump has left in Ukraine seems to be predatory. That's how they defined it. This agreement regarding rare earth metals, the head of the president's office, Andriy Yermak, speaking about the finalization of the agreement now, essentially we hear from all sides that it will be signed any moment now. He said that one of the elements of security guarantees could be American and European investments in exploration, extraction of minerals, and he added that the agreement should meet Ukraine's national interests and be mutually beneficial for the partners. I understand that somehow we just don't see this document. Trump also considers it an icon, a cross, and our protection. But the most important thing is that after the meeting with Macron, Macron says that the security guarantee plan for Ukraine is already prepared by France and Britain. And Trump responds to this by saying that Putin told him he is not against European peacekeepers on Ukrainian territory. You quoted Vitkov, the Istanbul agreements. Trump says Putin told me, plus somewhere in the center, Zelensky is supposed to come, sign this agreement and something else. And this is absolutely a mess. Where's the note? We return to the fact that tomorrow Ryabkov, Lavrov, Nebenzia will come out and say NATO troops on Ukrainian territory never. And the question of marriage was mentioned. What we signed with the Americans about what, says Yermak. Moscow says, no, friends, we don't play like that.
That's how it will be. Hold on. Putin told Trump, well, that's it. Since he said it, then that's everything. Already put it down, take it to the bank like me, you earn interest. Seriously, what Putin said? Putin said, you see the degree of delusion. Trump, she was easily convinced. Putin told him, gave his word, took his word back. Why not publicly declare in Moscow, at least for starters? Well, why not European peacekeepers? An acceptable measure in this case. Why not announce it publicly? But they declare the opposite. And Putin, you see, told him, so what? And where is it? Is it documented? Where is it declared? At least, where is some protocol of intent? Where is any preliminary, even if secret, confidential, but still a document? Where is it? Although we know the value of documents signed by Moscow and Putin and the obligations that arise from them, well, Budapest and Macron, do I need to go further? There were agreements on borders with Ukraine, so much was there, signed by Putin himself, not Yeltsin. This is not a conversation. But precisely for this reason, I have said many times, so you start implementing peacekeepers, so you bring them in, and let's see how Moscow reacts. They are not against it. He said he is not against peacekeepers. Putin is not against peacekeepers, so bring them in. Trump wants to obtain rare earth elements, okay? All right, he wants to claim resources during the reconstruction of Ukraine. There are investment guarantees and other things. So bring in troops, take them, bring in American troops, place them all around. There are no issues in the agreements where American troops are mentioned anywhere. But regarding the deposits and all the wealth he wants to obtain, I haven't heard anything about that anywhere. Trump declared about it. No, he says we won't. No, 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 no American troops. But it would be a different conversation if he were to protect these predatory Uyghur interests in a pith helmet like that, with the help of military force. It makes sense. Bring in the American forces, establish a no-fly zone, create safety zones in the water, tanks, planes, artillery, everything. Bring it in. What problems will there be with implementing any agreement? I'm not very knowledgeable about investments in natural resource exploitation. As I've said many times, this is not a war for resources at all. This is for Moscow. The resources there are modest in Ukraine. Well, they exist, but they are modest. In the scale of the 21st century global economy, you understand it's all some kind of minor fuss. In the order of land metals, we've already calculated, and look, fools are sitting there, that 3 billion is the maximum that can be earned annually as profit. 3 billion. What is that? The scale? When aid amounts to hundreds of billions, but tens of billions, he either doesn't understand this scale, or I don't know, maybe he's a nasty scoundrel. What does he want? Well, and I'll strip Ukraine before, as they say in the Caucasus during the war, the caucus. There's a saying, before you slaughter a piglet, you need to fatten it up well. That's how they refer to hostages there. Sometimes they joke like this, joked. But is he fattening up Ukraine before slaughtering it? I don't understand. What's the logic? You can't trust agreed verbally. This is always inflated. I'm also thinking right now about you should act, implement, and put Moscow in a position where it has no choice. And if it agrees, then you'll focus on extracting economic interest from the situation. Putin told him, so what the... And a day or two before the start of the so-called military operation, Putin was saying that, no, we will not attack Ukraine. Well, they all talked about it. Lavrov and Zakharova. Now, on the 3rd anniversary, many videos have been released. They talked about it all February. Yes, no, what are you saying? It's the West exploiting. They accuse us. That's how the conversation went. So do you want to fall for another scam? Putin ignore it like water off a... Do you think he stands by his words? No. That's why, actually, you see, I'm more triggered by the fact that Europe is trying to convince Trump of something. Well, can you do anything yourself? Well, I understand Starmer and Macron are ideologically, generally for Ukraine and so on, but implement it and present it as a fact to Trump. Listen, that's exactly what we did.
Well, apparently they brought the story there with a foreign contingent, although I still don't fully understand. Each of them says there won't be French troops, there won't be British, there won't be German. So which ones will there be? Somali? Well, tell me, are they made of papier-mâché? They'll be printed on a 3D printer? It's unclear, but nevertheless, this is indeed a conversation about some security system. Although we understand that all the weapons are with the Americans, the Europeans have the money. Today we heard in Kyiv many confirmations that the Europeans are staying with us. But in the end, you remain right. Do something, show it. Otherwise, it turns out that Trump doesn't even come out to the porch to meet Macron, thereby showing his attitude towards Europe.
Of course. Trump extremely disdainfully demonstrates this disdain in everything. Well, okay, we could still justify it when he is dealing with internal problems. When he confronted Colombia with a fait accompli, or Canada over fentanyl. Well, yes, it sounded public. We could still understand the attempt at pressure. I went ahead openly, limited. Place troops at the border so that fentanyl does not enter the United States. Locally, fine, okay. A radical measure, but it yields results. Take back your illegal migrants, criminals. That's justified too. But when he neglects allies on issues of strategic security, he demonstrates, why should I step out? If you want, you'll come in yourself. Well, that's an understandable protocol. Nevertheless, he proves it with his actions. This, of course, is an absolutely unacceptable attitude and policy. But I repeat, for Europe to gain subjectivity in order to influence these pan-European matters, their own affairs, not American ones. It's necessary to demonstrate, not wait for Trump to approve or agree. They need to act independently, show their strength, and not be afraid of it. And if you are always looking over your shoulder and constantly asking for permission, like, can we, the European contingent, what does Donald Trump think about this and what does Putin think about this, will never happen. Therefore, I believe that this is also to a certain extent a mistaken tactic, because everything has already been discussed. Everyone understands everything. Start doing something on your own. But if you are not ready to do it, then you will never be able to do it. Therefore, I think the key question here is Trump's motivation. We must clearly and plainly state either he truly has his own interest, and then let him imagine further, material interest, political interest, historical interest, but closely consider, I don't know where the interest lies, or if he doesn't understand what he's doing, where he's leading all this. But again, this assessment is not ours, it's for American politicians and all those in the Republican Party. Johnson already mentions Bolton, Vickers, and others, meaning these are people from the Republican side. His own politicians, who seemingly formally belong to the same party as him, are talking about this. So, in other words, this criticism is widespread. It's not just ours. We don't like it, and others don't either. Listen, the supporters of Trump, whom we've already talked about, who were backing him, now, oh, we are so confused. We don't understand what he's doing. Weren't there any indications? Didn't he, even in a milder version, say the same things when he entered the company? He said all the same things. Let me remind you of his speech in Monmouth, 2023. It was in the fall in South Carolina, where he said that if Putin has intentions, so to speak, he was asked if he would attack Europe, and he answered, absolutely not. Would he defend it? Absolutely not. Well, he did mention that if they don't raise, and yet the meaning of his words was absolutely no. And he should have answered, absolutely yes, we will defend, but we will make them increase military spending from the budget and so on. Absolutely yes, in all cases. But he said, absolutely not. Well, and he said something similar regarding Ukraine. I won't list everything he said, but now he speaks much more firmly. And those people who struggle to justify, you misunderstood. It's not about that. Well, the value of this crowd is zero. They are worth nothing, both as specialists, as experts, and as people with a position. Do you have a position or not? Or will you turn in any direction if Trump orders you to? Well, that's how it turns out. And Trump can't order me. Well, there's nothing to say about Putin. No, I will hold my position as I always have. I don't care who will challenge it in any other way, or somehow challenge it. He thinks one way and I think another. Therefore, the question here is about independently understanding what is happening. We see what's happening. So I think that Europe, in my opinion, has no chances left. Either or, that's it.
There is one Trump supporter who often says that in 3 years of full-scale war, not a single Ukrainian blogger or journalist has said a kind word about Trump. I can say that, in fact, none of the Ukrainian bloggers and journalists, well, in a massive way, have said what they think about Trump. We go on air not with our own opinions, we work for the audience, and essentially, it is not our task to impose our opinion on someone. Oh, believe me, there is something to say both before he became president. And now as well, but still, we maintain a certain objectivity just in our assessments. Meanwhile, today, a phone call took place. Mark, a war criminal. Putin spoke with Xi Jinping. I, illustrate it to myself like this. Xi Jinping calls Putin and says, listen, well, 3 years ago, well, you said it would be for a week, that it would be for a month. 3 years have passed. Volodya, what's going on? Now everything will be fine. So in Crimea, they stated that Putin informed the Chinese colleague about the latest Russian contacts with the Americans. Xi Jinping expressed support for the initiated dialogue between Russia and the USA. And you know what's strange in this regard? All these years, while the issue of negotiations was being raised, we understood, and maybe the experts presented it to us this way, that China would definitely want to participate in the negotiations. Nothing will happen without him. And as of today, Donald Trump, he has not only excluded them there. The Europeans, he even wants to proceed without Ukraine. But China is also not involved. And I can't quite understand, is Xi Jinping waiting, as always, on the sidelines, or is he satisfied with this position that, well, somehow they will come to an agreement among themselves. After all, Russia probably represents a position similar to what they think in China. How did it happen that China is nowhere to be found?
Well, first of all, they said they would like to host such negotiations and provide a platform. China has mentioned this several times. Already, regarding this statement, I think the verdict of Jinping, that's the first thing. Secondly, undoubtedly, China only works in its own favor and what they say publicly, whether it's a waiting position, of course. And thirdly, maybe he knows more. He might know that everyone has been thrown off. Xi Jinping might already know something. Why should he rush ahead? You started negotiating. Maybe he knows about Moscow's position. Maybe he knows that Moscow won't back down and they will hit a dead end with it. The Chinese might know much more than we can assume. They communicate with Putin. Putin called, reported, Comrade Jinping, I'm meeting, I'm doing well, good job. Good. That's approximately how it works, so we can speculate. But we just saw how China behaved in a sinusoidal manner, so to speak, sometimes this way, sometimes that way. Their representatives were there. And remember, there were friends of peace. Together with Brazil, there were all sorts of initiatives. But China follows its own policy, not Moscow's policy. It is neither pro-American nor anti-American, although that too, but it follows its own policy, its own interest. Depending on the course of events, it will maneuver in favor of negotiations between Moscow and Washington, or conversely against them. So, if everything stalls, if, so to speak, it comes to a deadlock, and Trump cannot pressure Putin, nor can Putin change his position, China will say, well, we warned you. What will you decide without us? You won't decide anything without us. Maybe they know this. Again, we are reconstructing what we do not know for certain, as we are not present at the negotiations between Putin and Xi Jinping, and so on. But we can assume that for now, China has no reason to make a move. And why do they know that Moscow has an unchanging position? It wants to absorb all of Ukraine and is well aware of it. Maybe they also know that Washington cannot agree to this. Even Trump couldn't. This is an unfeasible world construct, which is why China continues to remain unperturbed. After all, they are doing nothing, and everything seems to be happening around them. On the other hand, yes, they cannot help but be irritated by any attempt to make agreements outside their interest. Why? Because they also want to get their share. What do they want to get? I've already said, Taiwan, give it to us, and we will establish peace. Give us Taiwan, resolve some of our economic and technological issues. Interactions with the USA, the restrictions imposed on Chinese business, including technological, to steal technologies from the USA and other countries, civilized, advanced scientific countries, and so on. In other words, they have direct interest. They are not some abstract ideas like, let's just be friends and kiss. The Chinese don't operate that way. They want something specific. So give us Taiwan specifically, give it up. Oh no, there we can't. It's impossible. We need Taiwan. So you don't interfere with us peacefully annexing it, absorbing it, to create one China, not one country. Two systems, but just one country, one system, one leader. That's why in reality, China is currently taking a survival position. But I repeat, it's not like they are doing nothing at all. Indeed, they are influencing Moscow. And you demand more. I write a note imagining Donald Fredovich. He will go to any lengths, goes to any lengths, demands everything. And there among themselves, the Wangs, Xi Jinping, and others exchange glances. He also blackmails him. Therefore, I think that any direct combination of Washington-Moscow without China's participation is not beneficial for China. And they will make efforts to ensure that such a combo, such an alliance does not take place. This is my strong belief.
We keep in mind that a stable and more or less unified position is very important for us in the European Union, because after all, our main partners are here. They will partly oppose China. They will also oppose the USA, including together with us. And of course, Mark Glennis, the elections in Germany were very important. As they say, the results turned out to be slightly a little better than expected. And naturally, Trump had his say. Trump congratulated the conservatives in Germany on their victory. He said that just like in the USA, the people of Germany are tired of the unhealthy agenda, especially in energy and migration, which has prevailed over the past few years. In turn, Angela Merkel, the leader of the Christian Democratic Union, who we assume will soon become the first female chancellor of Germany, openly criticized the US position on the ongoing crisis in Ukraine, particularly in light of the latest statements. Thank you. In Germany and in Europe, in general, they need to accept the new reality that they will live without the USA. By the way, let me remind you, this is not the first time, because there were very tense relations during Donald Trump's first term. Then Joe Biden came, and as a gesture of goodwill, he lifted the sanctions on the Nord Streams to improve relations with Germany. So, in principle, for Germany, for Europe, to some extent, they have already experienced this. Nevertheless, what did these elections in Germany show us? And can you imagine a new reality where perhaps Germany will once again be the driver of new European policy? We talked with you in the context of Europe and support for Ukraine, but it must be understood that, of course, the European Union, NATO countries located on the European continent, they primarily think about themselves, about their own well-being. So how is it to live, including under Merz, without a big America?
And I wanted to, when I saw this little congratulatory telegram of the right centrists, ask if he congratulated the AfD alternative for Germany. Trump congratulate them. Didn't he write, they also got around 20%. Well, they remain outside the coalition, as I understand it will still be so. A grand coalition involving the CDU and the Social Democrats. Considering that now there will be a change in the leadership of the Social Democrats, Pistorius will come, who also holds quite a percentage, a Ukraine-centric position in the sense that he supports Ukraine. You heard in the Munich speech what tone he set for the crown, and now he has become such a demographic leader. Well, all else being equal, this is a very favorable combination of Merz and Pistorius, and with the Greens, it's more peculiar, but it doesn't matter. So, I want to say that for some reason, he decided to congratulate the ruling party, which, yes, indeed, there are talks about severe miscalculations. But this, by the way, started even with the center-right, Merkel. In migration policy, in other areas, and in ensuring security, military spending, of course, these are all fair points. We're just saying that the AfD's adaptation for Germany is essentially a pro-Moscow party. Unlike the right-wing Christian Democrats, well, that is, it is now ready to interact with traditional right-wing parties, just like with conservatives, well, if you like, and not Farage in the UK. Yes. With center-right parties, like Macron or Gaullists in France, and not with the left, for example, or with Macron, or together with Borodala there, with Mark Le Pen, who will run for president in 2027. That is pro-Moscow or traditional right-wing. I have already raised this question. Why was the choice made for the ultra, the extreme in its various forms, whether in Austria or the Netherlands, or still for the traditional line? Well, you need to interact. You need to negotiate specifically with them. And Merz's position, it suits him, the one he takes regarding the war in Ukraine, Moscow, and so on. So maybe we need to consolidate with this position. He will welcome it. All right. In matters regarding the war and Putin, he will align his position with him. In this regard, Merz is a proponent of transferring to Ukraine. Horus
will definitely not be transferred.
Look, we must always anticipate the worst. It's fair but it's the best of positions. But they need to demonstrate some change when coming to power. To continue doing what you did, being a micro Schultz or a Macron Schultz, why do you need that? It's a foolish position, the most foolish. But you can demonstrate it and say that we are still responsible politicians. We cannot fan the flames of war. Before the elections, I said that Torres could be transferred, and now after the elections, I will say that Torres should not be transferred, but that's the essence of European politics. Then, if you don't change it, if you don't align the response doesn't match the moment to the war and the problems looming over Europe. So what will you achieve then? You will constantly be running to different corners, to Beijing, to Washington. That's why I'm not so skeptical about the possibility of transferring Taurus. In essence, Taurus has become a bogeyman. Such missiles have been transferred to Ukraine, similar scalps or storm shadows. I don't understand why there's resistance. It's clear that this is also a symbolic political gesture beyond just a military one. Because if Germany gets involved in this way, then it indeed carries a certain degree of responsibility, much more. You lost, after all. Not only did the AfD not gain the maximum they expected, by the way, if they had won, Trump would have congratulated them. If they had gotten 30%, it would have been even better. If they lost, certain ones there in Latvia, he, so to speak, published this, meaning she lives in Switzerland, meaning the leader of these FD. And so she is in Latvia like a knight, but a lesbian, I don't want to say anything, for God's sake. It's her personal interest, not an issue at all. Well, they're just strange. They're still some kind of right-wing, ultra-right, very strange. Lesbians live in Switzerland and Latvia on Moscow's money. Well, okay, all right. So in any case, I believe that we are going in circles. Either Europe gains subjectivity by appointing itself, taking responsibility for its own security in Europe, or it is disavowed. But there is no other option here. That is, we are constantly looking for some kind of loophole for them, a way for them to sidestep and achieve this subjectivity. But it won't be like that. In any case, something will have to be sacrificed, and possibly a very significant sacrifice, whether it's Merz, Starmer, Macron, or anyone else. There are serious economic problems in Germany. Factories are closing. There's chaos with energy. You see all the consequences of several decades of insane policies, including, it doesn't matter if it's migration, economic issues. They went and shut down all the nuclear power plants. They abandoned nuclear energy. And now there's a wild dependency on energy resources and so on. Let them solve it. This is their direct task. But how can it change the international sphere of international security, the war in Ukraine, and relations with Moscow? Therefore, what is being stolen? The plant. The benefit was indecisive. But I came to the world, look how correct, sweet, smooth, and I can do it like this. But if you don't do it, then nothing will change. Everything here will deteriorate. Let's see. We give them a chance. We always give everyone an advance. We gave Trump an advance, and even more so to these ones.
I'll say in conclusion that as sad as it is for me, it's not like this now as a journalist to state, but no media outlet can literally be trusted just at their word anymore, because Fox News came out yesterday with information that today a war criminal, Putin, will declare Russia the winner in the war, as we can see as of 9 p.m. Kyiv time, this has not happened. What does this mean, friends? It means that you shouldn't fall for sensational headlines, rumors, or statements from Trump. Instead, come to our broadcasts and we can explain everything behind it to you. And the war won't end soon or in weeks, as Trump claims. Sadly, it won't end as fast as we want. You can see this by staying with us. Remember to like, subscribe to FEIGIN Life and KURBANOVA channels. We await your comments regarding the start of the full-scale war, what you remember. Thank you very much to everyone who watched us on Telegram, Mark FEIGIN, and on the social network X. And of course, friends, already on Thursday, as always, we will gather again as a group and discuss everything that has happened. Mark, thank you very much for the conversation for this hour, and see you soon.
Yes. I, of course, also thank you for being on the air. Indeed, a special day for us, already the 3rd anniversary. We continue to broadcast. Here is Solena Kurbanova and the diary. But this is a discussion of current political events that we allow ourselves, our comrade. The well-known musician Maxim Pokrovsky has released a video clip link. There is also a description for this video, and in the chat, which is here, a clip for the 3rd anniversary of the war, but such an anti-Putin clip in the style of Rammstein with Gothic images, and various such, so to speak, elements, very reminiscent of similar kinds of works with the use of AI. So I refer you to this clip. Take a look. Well, maybe it will catch on somewhat. Thank you, ALENA. Thank you to all the viewers of the FEIGIN channel.